Now let's focus on a topic which is very important. That's virtual networking. Now, why do we need our own virtual networking in cloud? Now, imagine if you want to create a network. Okay. Now, if you're connecting your local system, how do you connect your local system to a internet? Either you use a Wi-Fi, or I'm talking about your home computer, guys. Okay. So either you connect to your Wi-Fi and that Wi-Fi connect, or you connect to a LAN through a modem. That is what the setup you have right now, correct? Let me demonstrate with a pin right now. This is your home system. So take this as your home PC. I'm not talking about laptop for now. This is your home computer. Okay. So it's a personal computer, a PC, I would say. Now how this goes to internet. So you'll have a NIC card over here, somewhere over here. NIC is nothing but it's a network interface card through which a LAN will be either connected. A LAN cable will be connected. So using an RG45 cable, you'll be connecting to a modem. The modem will be somewhere over here. Modem is nothing but it's a signal demodulizer. Okay, so it's converting the signal for you. And you will have a LAN cable coming out from the modem and then connecting to the NIC card through which you will be able to connect to internet. Now this is providing a not static, it will provide a dynamic public IP. Now using that dynamic public IP, you will be able to connect to internet. And each system will have a dynamic public IP, because if you want to have a static public IP locally, then you need to go and purchase it from your ISP. That's your internet service provider. So each system will have its own public IP. If you want to see what's my public IP, the better way to see is let's go and see what's my ip.com. So this is the website you can go and you can view. This is my public IP. This is IPv6, guys. So nowadays we have started using IPv6. So if you see IPv6, using which I'm able to communicate. Country India, region Maharashtra, city Mumbai. Okay. So this is IPv6, what you see right now. Same way you can check yours also. You will find either IPv6 or IPv4. In my case, I'm getting IPv6. Okay. So this is the NIC card using which your system goes to internet and you will be able to browse internet. Now this modem, now if you want to connect to any other device, so like suppose you have your mobile device, your laptop and everything, then you will have some Wi-Fi router also. So eventually this Wi-Fi router is also connected to the modem. Okay. And this using this Wi-Fi router, now you are able to connect to mobile, you're able to connect to laptops and things like that. Now this is done through Wi-Fi card. Okay, this is a wireless card using which, so this plays a very similar role like NIC. Okay, so in NIC you connect the LAN, wherein the VLAN, wireless LAN, Wi-Fi card, it is over the Wi-Fi. So that's over the signal. It takes you to the internet. Basically, both the works are connecting your device to the internet. That is the part. Now, this modem, there's again a fiber cable. So if it's a fiber cable, then because nowadays we have all fiber cable. This goes somewhere and connect to some switches. This is outside your home. This is your switch will not there inside your home. This will be somewhere outside your home. Okay. Now using this switch, there will be multiple connection given to your neighborhood also. Now this is the connection given to you. Now from here, there will be other connection given to someone else. There will be other connection given to someone else. This is how a distributed network is designed. This is how what happens. A distributed network is designed. This is known as local area network. Okay, and from here there will be one more device somewhere over here. somewhere over here, through which the wire goes to ISP provider, so your internet service provider. So whoever your internet service provider is, this is the setup, typical setup what they do. Each device, whatever device you see, it will have a IP associated with it. Each device will have a IP, so it is nothing but it's a private IP. Whether you want to go to internet or not doesn't matter, but each device will have a private IP. Using that private IP only the communication happens on a specific port if required. Now this is a typical home setup. If you want to just go through it, see where your LAN is going, it will be either connected. So nowadays we have advanced technology, so there's no modem and all, guys. These both devices are clubbed together. Your Wi-Fi and your modem are all clubbed together. Previously we used to happen, they used to have a modem, a separate modem, and a Wi-Fi separate, and all this used to happen, but nowadays it's all together. So if you will see just one box of through which you're connecting to a Wi-Fi, and if you want to connect a RG45 cable, then a LAN cable is coming and you're connecting to your devices. Okay, that's it. Then it goes to the switch. From switch, your neighborhood is getting internet, and then henceforth there's the same setup everywhere. Okay, so why exactly I'm explaining this to you? The reason is, if you understand this simple setup, you will understand the setup in your offices. In your offices also, they will have this switches, they will have their own racks where they will have switches, they will have this LAN port on all the desktop, and this LAN port is connected to the routers, and you are able to connect your laptop. If you're working on laptop, then you're able to connect through a Wi-Fi, or you can even attach a LAN which is there on your desktop. And this is the exact same setup what you will see in your offices also. Now if you're talking about offices, just think about the data centers. Now let's go back and understand data center. Now even how the data center, what is data center, we have already gone through this data center concept a bit. Okay, so data center is what? Okay, wherein you have all your resources. It's a physical location wherein you will have all your resources, such as your compute, your memory. Along with it will also have your networking devices. Now the networking device, the purpose of the networking device is to make sure you are able to create your own virtual network. So it will have all sort of NIC card which will be attached to the compute. It will have the firewall. Now firewall is additional security which you're in placing. So you'll not have firewall hardware in your home, but definitely at the at your system level, at your router level, you can do filtration of what traffic should be allowed, what traffic should not be allowed, what IP should connect to your Wi-Fi, and all this you can still do. But this is at the software level, guys. Okay, there's no hardware device you will be setting up in your home. Okay, but in your company they will also have firewall, okay, to filter out traffic. Now in a DC, you will find firewall, you will find switches, you will find routers, and all this. Why exactly these are? These are there to create your own networking. Okay, so in a data center, you will be creating a number of VMs. So those VMs needs to be connected to network. It should be secured. All this, whatever ports, whatever IPs, whatever DNS entries you want to allow, only those networks should come in, or all other networks should be dropped. All this type of setup if you want to do, then you will need all this networking device. So when you're setting up your own DC, you will have all this networking devices also in place, okay, through which, and even in your DC you will get your internet from your ISP, that your internet service provider. The only difference is you will not have just only one ISP. Like in our house we just have one ISP. If something happens to the internet, we are down. But in data centers you will have multiple ISP. You would have taken a high bandwidth line, high fiber line with, so that make sure your services are up and running 24/7. That is what the setup is all about. So you can just think of Azure data centers now, they have the same devices. Like how normally we have the devices, they will have the same set of devices. The beauty of using cloud services is that you don't have to go with this clumsy setup of networking. You don't have to go with the clumsy setup to set your own networking, because if you go and if you have seen the data centers and if you've seen the application, because if you're using a firewall of Cisco, you'll be using the portal of Cisco. If you're using a say switch for some other company, you'll be using the portal. So all these different portals you have to go through, and you have to set up your own networking. And let me tell you, if you're not from a networking background, it will be very difficult for you to go and set up things directly. Now, what cloud providers have done a great job. They have simplified the complete process. What do I mean by simplification? What they have done, they have all these devices, they have their own data center, they have still have all these devices, but they got their own portal. Using that portal, you can create your own virtual network on top of it. So suppose if you have VMs, you will have your own NIC card. You can have your own NIC card. This will be, you can have your own filtration option. You can go to internet using this NIC card. You can create your own virtual network wherein you can allow which port, you can allow the port and IPs by yourself. You can assign public IP if you want. So if you want a static IP, even that is possible. And there are other features and benefits which is provided. So this is what these cloud providers have done. They have given you a very simplified portal through which you can set up your own virtual network. Okay. Thus, the whole purpose of explaining this basic is to make you aware that networking setup, it's a difficult task, and this got simplified with all these cloud providers. Not just Azure, guys, even AWS has a very good networking setup which you can do. Same goes with Google. Now, what exactly is Azure VNET? Azure VNet is the fundamental building block for your private network in Azure. So if you want to set up your own private network, now what is private network, guys? I've already explained. So whenever you want to get confused what exactly this is, just think of your local system, your local laptop, how it connects. You need all these devices. You need a modem, Wi-Fi, switches, and the LAN cable, and a high optics cable is coming in. All this you need. So that is your private network, correct? That is your home network. Same goes even in cloud. If you have VMs, so VM needs some sort of internet, correct? It needs to connect to internet. It needs to go on Google. It needs to fetch packages. How exactly it will do it? It needs to communicate with other device. How exactly it will do it? It will be done using Azure Virtual Network. It's a fundamental building block. You can build your own private network in Azure. VNet enables many types of Azure resources such as Azure VM to securely communicate with each other, with internet, and with on-prem networks. So with VNet, you can make sure that your resources are able to communicate with each other first. Second, if you want your resources to connect to internet, then it will be allowing that also. Third, it can even connect to on-prem networks. What do I mean by on-prem network? You might have be working, you might come across companies wherein they are working in hybrid environment. What is a hybrid environment? That means they have VMs on their own data center, they are owning a data center, and they're even working on cloud. So partially on cloud, partially on data center. Such companies will have difficult connecting to cloud from their local system. So using this Azure virtual network, even this is possible if you want to connect to on-prem network. So even that is possible with Azure VNet. So there are multiple things which you can do using which you can even connect to on-prem network. So there are multiple services which is provided by VNet. So if you want to connect to on-prem, so the services are point-to-point virtual network. That's a VPN through which, so we all know what exactly is VPN, through which you can connect to your on-prem. We can even have site-to-site VPN. We can even have an express route. So this is a costly affair. So this is a dedicated line. Just imagine a dedicated line going to your data center through which the communication is happening. If you want to communicate between Azure resources, so there are options like through virtual network, we can connect a virtual network. Virtual network service endpoints, we all know what is service endpoint now. What is, remember yesterday we spoke about the storage account and the VM, how we can enable file share using a private endpoint. So this is service endpoint. VNet pairing, if there are two virtual network and if you want to enable communication between them, then we got VNet pairing as well. How do we filter traffic? NSG, ASG. So what do I mean by filtering traffic? Like suppose you just want to allow port 80 to your VMs. You don't want to allow any other port. This is we have seen, correct, when we were creating VMs. So this is NSG is all about network security group. ASG is application security group. We'll understand in detail what exactly it is. Route network traffic. So they are route tables. You can even have the route tables created using which you can route traffic also. Okay, so this is all about virtual network. So virtual network is a fundamental building block for your private network in cloud. Okay, we'll talk about filter traffic in a bit. What are the virtual network benefit? The first benefit is representation of cloud network. So what exactly it is? It's a logical representation of network in the cloud. Azure Virtual Network helps you to manage networking in Azure. So if you want to enable networking, you want to create your own virtual network, this is what you can do. You will have dedicated instance. What do you mean by that? You will have a VNet instance in Azure is private and dedicated. So you'll create your own VNet, that's your virtual network, and you can create your own private network. So if you see this diagram, this is your virtual network, guys. Inside this virtual network, you have your resources. You have your Linux VM, you have your Windows VM, and this is connecting to internet. Okay. Hybrid scenario, with the help of VNet, we can extend on communication to on-prem data centers and other cloud provider securely. So as I said, hybrid, it also supports hybrid scenarios. If you want to connect to on-prem data centers, even that is possible. Connectivity between Azure services. So you can, virtual network is responsible for facilitating connectivity between two Azure virtual machines. So if you want to enable communication between these two, this will happen only because of virtual network. Okay. Or else if you want to connect to some other VM, then even that is possible. Okay. So this is the virtual network for you guys. Okay. How do we create a virtual network? Let's go and see the demo. Before that, anyone has any questions with the theory? Any questions, guys? Any doubt with virtual networking? This is a repetition lecture, guys. So if you have already gone through this session, so just a recap for you all. This is for mostly these sessions are mostly for newcomers who have joined last week. Okay, so this is for them. I'm just having a couple of sessions on virtual network again because this is a building block. You need to understand what exactly is virtual network before we move on in cloud topics. Okay, so if no question, let's go and see how we can create a virtual network. Let's go to Azure portal. Now in the portal, if you want to create a virtual network, just look for virtual network at the top. Or just type VNet. VNet stands for virtual network. So this is how you can go and create your own virtual network. You can create a virtual network. Okay, so same goes over here also. Virtual network, you can have a resource group created. Let's name it as Valaxy RG. Give a name to your virtual network, VNet 1, and the region is East US in which I'm creating virtual network. Bastion, Azure Bastion, what exactly it is, we'll see it in tomorrow's session. For now, just ignore it. Firewall and all, for now, just ignore it. Just click next. Now, this is your virtual. What did I say when I was creating the diagram? That each device in your network will have a public private IP. Okay, each device will have a private IP. So this is the IP range. What you see right now, add a address space. This is the IP range which will be allocated to your virtual network. That is 10.0.0.0/16. So how many IPs are getting assigned? 65,536 addresses are getting assigned over here. Okay, so this is the IP range which is getting assigned to your virtual network. If you want to delete and if you want to create of your own, you can do it. I can create my own IP range. So why exactly this IP range is? So in your virtual network, there are multiple devices. For example, where the PPT is, there are multiple devices. The devices such as your Linux machine, your virtual machine, there could be other devices. So all this will need at least a private IP for the communication, because the communication happens over the IP. Okay, if there's no IP, there's no communication. So from where exactly these devices are getting the IPs? So these devices are getting IP from the virtual network, the one which we are defining right now, the IP range what we're defining right now. Okay, I can have something like 10.1.0.0/16. Yes. Starting address 10.0.0. Okay, I can have something like this 1, and these are your subnet. So if I want more, so if I select 16, this is 65536 number of IPs. So this is very good. I'm seeing it for the first time that they are even calculating things. So I think this is a new update. Okay, previously we used to just assign IPs and this calculation we used to do. Now you can do it. Now these are all subnet masks, guys. I'm not sure if you're aware of subnetting in. So this is how you will be. Now the IPs are of 32 bits. Okay, this is how it starts. The numbers which you see 0.0.0.0, and this is are of 32 bit. This is 8 bit, this is 8 bit, and this is 8 bit, and this is 8 bit. This is how, if you suppose if you're using a class A IP, it starts with 10. Mostly this is used for private IPs. 10.0.0.0. That means this subnet, if you have using 10 over here, that means this subnet is taken. The only remaining is 888. Okay, so that number of IPs you can allocate. Now if you're using a subnet mask of 16 over here, so these two blocks are taken. So your IP will start only from here. What do I mean by that? Like, now if I'm selecting this range this way of subnet 16, so that means two blocks are taken. You cannot add any IPs over here, any numbers over here. The only numbers you can add it over here. Now how the IPs will be allocated to your devices? If you're using this range, the IPs will be somewhere like this: 10.0.1.0. Okay, now the other IP will be 10.0.1.1, and it will go till 10.0.1.0. 1.0.254. Basically, it goes till 255. 255th is a reserve one, so you cannot use it. So this much of IPs will be allocated. Okay. Now, other once this is exhausted, the other devices will start getting this IP 10.2.0, and it goes till 10.0.2.254, and eventually this will end up going till, this is how the IP is calculated. Eventually this will end up going till 10.0.254.0 slash 10. So this is how your IP will be calculated if you're using this 16 over here. So this is a pretty big IP range which we are talking about. So in this way, this will be totally how many IPs will be calculated. Now this is 28 I have selected. If I go and select 16, this is around 65,536 IP which will be allocated. Okay. So this is a pretty big IP range what we're talking about. How do you, now if you want to, so you don't need to do this manual, guys. There are calculators available online which you can make use of. So if you want IPv4 calculator, CIDR calculator. So this is your calculator. You can go and this is what you're selecting. This is very similar what we had. 255, 0.0. If you want network class A, there are 3 classes which I said. Now you can go and calculate. And if you see, if you're using this salutation CIDR notation as 16, the number of usable host 65,534. This is also called as subnet masking. There are better calculator. This is, you can go with the JODS, and in the JODS you can put your numbers. So we want something like 10.1.0.0. What do you want? We want 16. Now you want to calculate how many IPs. See how many IPs. Network mask is 16. Network starting 10.1. Broadcast range this. Hostline range and number of hosts 65,534. So basically, the virtual network which you're creating, this is your virtual network. This virtual network will have this IP range 10.1.0/0/16, and whatever devices will come inside now will have, like suppose these are your VMs which you're creating. Now these VMs will get IP from this IP range. These VMs, whatever we have, we will be creating inside this virtual network, will get this IP from this IP range. Now this is a bit of understanding networking, guys. Okay, so I know this is you might not be familiar with this, but this is just a basic understanding what is networking. How do you give IP address? How do you assign IP addresses? And why do you have to know this? Because in cloud mostly you will be creating a virtual network. In a data center mostly you have a networking guy who will be setting up things for you, but in cloud this is very basic. A portal is given, you just need to select the right IP range and select the right subnet and you're good to go. This is just for your devices which is there in cloud to communicate. So the basic understanding is more than enough. So in IPv4 you can, if you have selected such big range, so firstly you should not select such big range wherein you're taking up 65,000 IPs. You can break this down. Okay, how do we break this network? Okay, so there is a concept of subnetting. Now what exactly is subnetting? Subnetting is the practice of dividing a network into 2 or more similar networks. Now this is, I'm talking about a very big IP range. 65,000 IP is there inside this. Now if we have only one virtual network, and if we have such a big range, and if we are all our devices are there inside created, then there could be a security lapse. So with subnetting, what we can do, we can have multiple subnets created. Now, what is the benefit of subnet? We can break this bigger broadcast network into smaller networks. We can break this bigger network into smaller network. What do I mean by breaking the bigger network into smaller network? So this is like, suppose this is the IP range you're selecting. You can break this network into smaller network by using something like this: 10.1.0.0 1.0/24. So what did it do? From this IP range, you have break this IP into more smaller network. Okay. Same goes over here. You can even have something like this: 10.1.2.0/24. So you're breaking the network into smaller network. Now all the devices which is there inside the smaller network will get IP from this range. All the devices which is there in the smaller network will get IP from this range. Now what is the benefit of doing this? Why are we breaking? So it can increase routing efficiency. First, it can enhance security. If anyone tries to enter your network, they can, even though if they enter the virtual network, they cannot enter the subnet. Okay, so enhancing security, and plus it is reducing such a big broadcast range which you have selected. It is reducing the size. Okay, so you'll have a single broadcast domain, you will have network security. So this is what subnetting is. Breaking, it's a practice of dividing a network into two or more smaller networks. So same goes over here. If you want to break this, how actually in reality we can break, I can add a subnet over here. Now in this subnet, I can see it is already selecting by itself 10.0.0.0/24. I can have something over one over here also. It will not make any difference. Like if I'm having 0, it is selecting 256 addresses. If I'm selecting 1, it's also selecting 256 addresses. So I'm just breaking the bigger network, this whole big network, into small network. So this subnet will have only 256 addresses. How it is calculated? That is something we can again go into the calculator and you can see it. You can have your subnet over here. Okay. Now we got the IP address. We got the subnets. I can simply go and review and create. Now I do see some questions over here. Okay, what is the significance of 16? 16 is net. So this is a net mask. Basically, it's a CIDR. So whenever you have a IP, so this is how your IP will look like. In reality, your IP will look like something like this. If you do a net masking of your IP, this will look like something like 255.255.255.254. This is how your IPs are calculated. Okay. Now, when I say 16, okay, so what does that depict? So these two columns are gone. You cannot assign any numbers over here now. If you say 16, okay, so what will happen if I'm talking about type A IP? So this is something like this will happen. Now you can just assign IPs over here, 255.254 if you're saying 16. So you can go and change numbers over here. So your devices will start getting IP. As I said earlier, this is how the devices will start getting IPs. So the next IP will be allocated will be 10.0.1.0. This way the IPs will start getting allocated. Now if suppose I'm saying 24. So these three blocks are gone. You cannot assign IPs in these three blocks. And it will be 10.0.0/254 if I'm selecting 24. This is what net masking is all about, guys. And if you say 32, for imagine if you say 32, so you will be completely taken. 255, and the last, this is only the last block will be available for you. Okay, if you're saying 32. Okay, so you cannot assign anything, only this last block, even this will be taken. So you'll have only specific IPs, a very least number of IPs which you can allocate. Now if you're saying 8, it will be 10 dot, you will have this 3 blocks available. 8. So this is 8-bit, this is 8-bit, this is 8-bit, this is 8-bit, all together it formed 32 bits. So this is how it is, IPs are calculated, guys. Okay, so this is what we are doing. This is a pretty big network which we're talking about. So this big network is subdivided into small networks using subnetting. Okay, how does it affecting number of IP? Yeah, so this is how the IPs are calculated basically. All your private IP, this is how the IPs are calculated. And I was talking about network type. There are 3 classes, guys, basically. So bit of networking. Don't worry if you don't understand this. This is more for the networking guys. But just basic understanding of networking will take you places. Okay. So there are class A type, type A, which is mostly a private IP starting with 10.0.0.0. Then you will find class B IPs, wherein this is more of public IP starting with 192 series. Then you get class C IPs, not, this is basically starting with 172 range. So you will see all the public IPs, all the private IPs with this range. If it's a private, it will start with 10 dot something. If it is public, you will find either 192 or 172. This is how IPs are allocated in real time. Okay. Even if you see my system, if I open command line, if you want to see my IP, so this is IP config for Windows. See this, my IPv4 172 public, and this, see the subnet mask 255, 255, 255, 240. So within this range, I can allocate IPs. And this is my IPv6. Nowadays we started using IPv6 also. This is my default gateway 172. This is my gateway through which I'm getting connection, and I'm connecting to a wireless LAN. Okay, so this is, I'm connecting to a wireless device. Correct, I'm not connected to Ethernet. Okay, so this is how you will be calculating IPs, and this is how you will be assigning IPs to your system even. 172 is not, basically it can be used for public, and it can be also used for your gateways, routers, so all these devices. So even those devices will get 172 IPs, Prashant. Mostly public IP will be starting with 192. Most cases it will be 192. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question, Sirisha. Now, you don't need to jump in and understand this in a greater details, but basic understanding of IP addresses, subnetting, what is public IP, what is private IP, static, dynamic IPs, that's it. That is what you need to know. Okay. Now, this is my virtual network got created. This is the address which we have selected, and this is the subnet which we have created. So basically in this big address, I am just utilizing this much of IP right now. Not utilizing, I have not even created any device in this. So only 256 IPs are getting allocated right now. So I have only one subnet. If I want to create more subnets, I can go and create those subnets. Okay. But such a big range is not suggested for having a 65,000 IP just for one VNet So this is not suggested. This is just for your understanding, guys. I've created this. If I in reality, if I'm creating, I'll basically go with something 24, a small range. Okay, because I'm pretty sure that I'm not creating 65,000 resources in this virtual network. If I'm creating that much, that's a different story, but that's not possible. So I'll have, if in reality you will have something, a small range of IPs allocated over here. Now how do you work? Now this is what we have created, correct? Let me have a diagram created now. Now till now what did we create? We had a virtual network created. Inside this virtual network, I have one subnet created. I have my subnet created. So the IP which I have selected for my virtual network was 10.1.0.0/16. And I break this IP into smaller network. The network range I have selected is 10.1.1.0/24. Now your resources will be created now within this subnet. Like suppose you're creating a VM, so your VM will be created within this subnet. Okay, and if you don't want to connect to internet, then there's no need of assigning a public IP. As I said, if you want any device, if you want to connect to internet, then there is a requirement of a public IP. Okay, and if you want to connect this to internet, like suppose this is internet for you, this is internet. If you want to connect to this internet, your VM services to internet, then you will need to have a public IP assigned. Each device, like how your local system is, what did I say? That if you want to connect your laptop or a computer to internet, the first thing you will need a NIC card. That's a network interface card using which you can connect to internet. Or if you're connecting a laptop, you will need a VLAN card. You saw my system, my IP. There was a wireless LAN card which I was using. So you either need a NIC card or a wireless LAN card to connect to internet. Okay, so we'll need to assign this VM a NIC card. A NIC card will be assigned to this VM. Then only you will be able to connect to internet. This NIC card will get the IP. The public IP will be given to this NIC card, and through this you will be able to connect to internet. Keep this in mind. Without NIC, your VMs will not be connected to internet. If you want to internal communication, still you need a NIC card, because where you will assign your private IP. Like suppose you don't want to connect to internet. You want there's one more VM inside your subnet, and you want to establish the communication between this. You still need a NIC card at both the places. I'll talk about this later. For now, let's do this setup. We already have this virtual network created, correct? We already have this subnet created. The only thing is we need to create a VM. We need to assign a NIC card. We need to assign a public IP. Then my application will be able to connect to internet. Okay, makes sense? Let's go ahead and do it. Now I'll go to the virtual machine. Till now we were creating the network automatically, guys. So in the last 2 weeks, I have not created any virtual network. This was getting created automatically. Today, we have created the virtual network by ourselves. Now I'll be using that virtual network for my machine. Now, virtual machine name, security type, image. Let's go and select Ubuntu. Okay, this is not. I want one vCPU, 2 gig of memory. That is more than enough for practice. And then the user ID. Okay, I'm not allowing any ports for now. I'll just keep it none. I'll explain you this, what exactly this is. Disk is okay. Now the networking part. Now in the networking part, see, it is selecting Valaxy RG VNET, and this is the subnet which we have created. This is our network, guys. Correct? Wait, let's verify this. What is the name of our virtual network? No, the name is VNet 1. How come this is not selecting VNet 1? What is the region? East US. Valaxy RG. Okay, this is good. East US is good. Why it is not selecting my network? Why it is creating new one? Refresh it. It should select our own network. We have a virtual network right now. Correct? Why it is creating a new one? This could be a glitch. Okay, East US, everything is okay. This I'll go and change. I'll change to this one. This is very cheap. Well, let's see. Test at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3. None. Disk. Networking. Still not create. Going and selecting my own network. Let me close this all. Let me open this in incognito mode. This could be due to caching. It's not taking my. I'm not sure the password. That's good. Okay, so we got our virtual network is there, correct? Let's verify it. We got the virtual network. This looks good. Now let's go and create a virtual machine. Let's go to networking directly. It's not showing my virtual machine. Wait. Let's select the resource group first. East US is okay. Now go to networking. Now do you see it's showing VNet 1 now? So this is the caching and all, guys. So if you have any such issues wherein it's not showing your resources, make sure to open in incognito mode and try it once. Okay, now it is showing. So VM1, Ubuntu, select 1 vCPU, 1 gig of memory. This comes in free tier, guys. So make sure to use this size. And let's have Valaxy. Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Public inbound ports, I'll keep it none. Networking we have already selected. This is my own network which we just created. This is the subnet range which we have created. Let's go and review and create. So what we did, we had this created. Now we created a VM. Along with the VM, a public IP was also assigned. I'll show you where exactly it was assigned, and I'll show you the NIC card also. Let's wait while the VM is getting created. Anyone has any questions in between while we are creating the VM? Just go through this concept of subnetting and virtual network. Try creating virtual network and see, play around with the range and see how things are changing. Okay, let's wait. If you would have noticed, there's a network interface card is also got created. There's a public IP that is getting assigned, and go to resources. This is your VM which got created. Now this VM has a public IP over here. Okay, so this is the public IP which is getting assigned. If you want to connect this system to internet, then there's a public IP. And if you come to left hand side down, there's an option of networking over here. If we click on this networking, Do you see a network interface card? VM1285. What did I say? A network interface card will be attached to your VM and a public IP will be attached created to that VM. So this is a network interface card which is attached to your VM. Okay. Now if you see, there are inbound and outbound rules. What exactly this is? These are NSG, Network Security Group, which is attached to your network interface card. So basically there is something attached over here. There is something attached over here which is known as NSG. And what is the work of this NSG? Is to filter traffic. Now suppose on this NSG you have mentioned that only allow port 22, that is SSH port, correct? If any request from internet is coming on port 80, like suppose they are coming on port, the request is coming on port 80, it will be denied. It will not be allowed to enter your VM. If your request is coming on port 22, then it will be allowed because at the NSG you have allowed port 22. NAG is to filter traffic. So whatever traffic you want, only those type of traffic needs to be allowed and all other traffic needs to be denied. So this NSG, this network security group, is attached to your NIC card currently. Now if you see this, we got a network interface card and we got the network security attached to, where it is attached to your network interface card. And we currently, if you see, we haven't allowed anything. If you haven't allowed anything, if you want to SSH to this system, this is how you will be connecting to your VM. Copy that public IP, open git bash, a bash shell. If you have not downloaded, make sure to download this git bash from internet. And if you try to SSH, what is the name of the user? Valaxy. If you try to SSH, it will not let you enter the VM. The reason is we haven't allowed anything. So no ports are allowed. No, not 22, not 30, no 443, no 3389, nothing has been allowed right now. Okay, so it's all denied. This is all by default got created. We haven't created anything. Now, if you want to allow, what you have to do, you need to go in, add inbound port rule, source. Source would could be anything because you're allowing from internet. Destination, it could be anything. If you want to be very specific that the traffic should come from this IP range, then you can be that specific also. But for now, let's keep it any. And what is the port you want to allow? SSH. What is the SSH port? Is 22. What is the action? It's allow. What is priority? This is the highest priority which you can give. So this is the traffic which will be allowed the first 100 priority. The other rules will be 101, 102, something like this. This is the highest priority through which this port will be allowed first. Just keep that in mind. I just add this traffic. Now I'm adding this rule. So basically what I'm saying, I'm allowing port 22 at the NSG level. Now, can I do SSH to this machine? So the answer is yes. See this, I'm able to connect. It will prompt me for a password. This is, I'm connected. If you want to know about your IPs and all, you can. This is ifconfig in Linux, not ipconfig. It's not installed. The tool is not installed. So we may have to go and install the tool if you want the output. Okay, so this is 4 things we have learned. What exactly is virtual network? What is subnet? What is a NIC card? What is NSG? Let's go to the PPT. NSG basically is what? Let's understand that. NSG can contain multiple inbound and outbound security tools that enables you to filter traffic. We just saw how do we filter traffic to and from resources by source and destination, IP address, port, and protocol. NSG has various properties. We saw name, priority, source destination, protocol, direction. If you want to have a port range, even that is possible, and action. What do you want? Allow, deny. NSGs can be attached to subnets, network card, or ASG. So as if now this was attached to where? It was attached to network card. If you want, you can have a NSG attached over here also. So your network traffic will be routed from this. The network traffic will be routed from this NSG, and then it goes to this NSG, then it will be allowed. Now suppose you're denying 80 over here and you're allowing 80 over here. What will happen? The network traffic is coming, it says denied. Your request is denied over here itself. Now suppose you're allowing 80 over here and denying 80 over here. Port 80, that is STTP port, guys, just for FYI. So network traffic will enter this NSG and it will find out, okay, there's no port 80 is allowed. It will try to go move forward and the port 80 is denied over here. So if you are attaching multiple NSGs, then you have to allow port at both the levels. If you are assigning multiple NSG, in my case, the demo which we did, we had only one NSGs. Now this demo which I'm showing, that multiple NSG, this is something I'll show you tomorrow, how this works. Then there's a concept of ASG, that's application security group. We'll see that also. Now if you see my PPT, NSG can be attached to subnets, network card, or ASGs. So there are three things where NSGs can be attached. So this is something we'll see tomorrow. Okay, guys, any questions? I know a bit of networking. We are deviating from DevOps, but yeah, this will definitely come handy if you're setting up your own infrastructure by yourself. Then you should have a basic understanding of networking. Okay, anyone, any questions?
Hi,
Yeah,
Rohit.
yeah.
Yeah, while we are designing and giving the subnet range and all these things, so who's taking a decision means we are taking a subnet of 16 range or the 24 range is a project manager or that need to take by means we need to take by own.
No, you cannot take this decision by yourself, firstly. So this is mostly in reality, if you ask me, this is taken care by solution architect who is designing the complete infra for you, who is designing the flow, like how the things will be flowing. This requirement will be given to the infra team. So cloud admin team, if you have infra team, they will be selecting the right range. Okay, what range it will be, what, how many subnets do we need based on the architecture, architect what has been designed. Now they will be selecting the range. Now the solution architect will not go more granular and giving you IPs and all. Infra team will come in based on what architect design has been given. Based on that, he will go and give the range to you. Now again, he cannot give a big range. Now just imagine if he's giving a big range of 65,000 IP. There are other resources also on cloud, correct? It's not just your application. Because if you take this range cannot be allocated to some other resource now. Now if you're taking this 65,000 range and you're creating your own VNet, now that range cannot be assigned to any other VNet, any other resources. So you have to think from that perspective. This IPv say that how, what is the private IP range I have to give it. Okay. Now again, if you ask me if it's a role of a DevOps engineer, I'll say no. This is more from the solution architect perspective, and then it goes to the cloud infra team who is setting up the infra for you. Plus, if you talk about from the DevOps engineer, you may write your Terraform scripts, you may write your ARM template to create infrastructure. So that is the reason I have gone through this VNet and all in a greater details, that if you get an opportunity to make sure to have minimum of 256 IP range address, such address, select such address, make sure to make use of the calculator on internet and see what is the range you can select, what are the number of IPs getting created and things like that. Okay, if you get an opportunity, then definitely you can do it. But in most cases, you will find out that the virtual network is already created, the subscription is already there, and they will ask you to create the resources inside the virtual network. Okay, so it depending upon what type of project you're working on, depending upon whether they have a good infra team or not, or if they're expecting you to do the infra setup also, the CI/CD pipeline setup also, the configuration setup also. So it's all your task, like mostly a side engineer role. If you're playing, then you might end up doing all this by yourself. Hope that helps.
Yes, thanks.
No problem. Anyone else, guys? Any other question? Okay, this week, end of this week, I'll get you the assignments, guys. We have done Azure VM. Now this is Azure Virtual Network and Azure Storage Account. This three services is very important services in Azure Cloud. And there are other services also which we'll do, like Azure Key Vault, Azure ACR, AKS, and SQL Server. And there are Azure Web Servers. There are many things what we will do eventually. But for now, this is the three things: virtual network, VM, and storage account. Now I'll be giving you assignments based on this by end of Friday. Make sure to complete that assignment, and in this week itself, make sure you're thorough with all these topics. Okay. If you have any questions, please do let me know, and or else we can wind up the call. Tomorrow we'll talk about NSGs, we'll talk about ESGs. If time permits, we'll talk about NAT gateway and VNet peering. So these are the four topics we'll try to cover tomorrow. Okay, guys, thank you very much. Let's meet up tomorrow and let's continue this virtual network topic. Bye bye.